I sat in that sterile conference room watching my boss Marcus destroy 42 lives with a smile on his face. He announced Cloud Tech Solutions was sold to Lyra Systems for $55 million and we employees were getting nothing. The room actually cheered. I stood up, my heart pounding, and asked who the buyer was. Marcus smirked like Head won the lottery. Lyra Systems, he said. I nodded calmly and delivered the words I'd been rehearsing all night. Good. They hired me last night. Without me, the platform doesn't run. The room went completely silent. 3 years ago, I walked into Cloud Tech Solutions as their new lead software architect. My name is Lola, and at 28 I thought I'd found my dream job. The company was struggling, hemorrhaging money, and desperately needed someone who could build their vision into reality. That someone turned out to be me. Marcus Henderson, the founder and CEO, hired me with promises that felt too good to be true. You're going to be the backbone of this company, Lola, he told me during my first week. We're family here, and I take care of family. He painted a picture of equity sharing, of growing together, of building something meaningful that would secure everyone's future. I believed him completely. For 3 years, I poured my soul into that company. 60-hour weeks became my normal. I missed my sister's wedding because of a critical system failure. I turned down dates because I was debugging code at 9 p.m. on Friday nights. I skipped family Christmas twice to handle emergency maintenance during the holidays when our client usage spiked. The platform I built from scratch became Cloud Tech's crown jewel. When I arrived, they had a basic data management system that crashed weekly and frustrated every client. I rebuilt it entirely, creating a proprietary distributed computing architecture that could handle massive workloads without breaking. I designed custom security protocols that made us virtually unhackable. I trained our entire development team, turning junior programmers into skilled professionals who could maintain and expand my work. My innovations didn't just save Cloud Tech from bankruptcy. They made us profitable for the first time in the company's history. Client retention went from 30% to 95%. Our revenue tripled. Major corporations started reaching out to us instead of the other way around. Marcus loved taking credit for our success. At company meetings, Head gestured toward the wall display showing our growth metrics and beam with pride. This is what happens when you have vision. Head tell potential investors. He never mentioned the countless nights I spent restructuring databases or the elegant algorithms I'd created that made our platform faster than any competitor. But privately, Marcus seemed different. During our monthly one-on-one meetings, He'd get almost emotional talking about loyalty and commitment. Lola, I don't know what I'd do without you, he said last Christmas, handing me a bonus check with a handwritten note thanking me for my dedication. This company exists because of people like you. When we go public or get acquired, you'll be taken care of. I promise. Those promises felt genuine. Marcus would invite me to leadership strategy meetings where we'd discuss 5-year plans and expansion goals. He'd ask my opinion on major decisions and actually listen to my advice. When our biggest client threatened to leave due to a competitor's lower prices, Marcus supported my proposal to add premium features that justified our rates. It worked perfectly, and we kept the client while increasing our profit margins. The warning signs started 3 months ago, but I was too trusting to recognize them immediately. Marcus began having closed-door meetings with people in expensive suits who didn't work for us. He'd schedule these mysterious appointments and ask his assistant to block out his calendar with generic labels like strategy session or consultation meeting. Around the same time, Marcus implemented new security protocols that seemed strange for a growing company. He restricted access to our financial reports, which had previously been shared with senior staff quarterly. He required all department heads to sign additional non-disclosure agreements that were much more restrictive than our original contracts. The most troubling change was when Marcus hired Pembroke Consulting, an outside firm that specialized in asset evaluation and corporate restructuring. Their team spent 2 weeks interviewing employees, analyzing our systems, and reviewing our client contracts. When I asked Marcus why we needed external consultants, he gave me a vague answer about optimizing our operations for the next phase of growth. My suspicions crystallized 2 weeks ago during a routine system backup. I was working late, as usual, when I noticed unusual activity on our shared server. Someone had been accessing encrypted files in a directory I'd never seen before. Using my administrator privileges, I traced the activity back to Marcus' personal account. What I found made my stomach drop. Marcus had been secretly negotiating with Lyra Systems for months. The encrypted folder contained email threads, contract drafts, and financial projections that told a devastating story. Marcus wasn't planning to grow cloud tech or take us public. He was planning to sell us and walk away with millions while leaving every employee with nothing. The sale agreement was already 90% complete. Lyra Systems would pay $55 million for cloud tech's assets, client contracts, and intellectual property. The deal was structured as an asset acquisition rather than a merger, which meant no employee retention requirements, no severance packages, and no obligations to honor existing employment contracts. The most shocking part was Marcus' personal compensation. Head negotiated a $12 million founder's bonus on top of his existing equity payout. Meanwhile, the 62 employees who'd built this company with their sweat and sacrifice would get exactly nothing. We'd all be terminated the day the sale closed, with 2 weeks' notice if we were lucky. But the betrayal went deeper than just money. I found email threads where Marcus had been actively sabotaging our reputations with the buyer. He described our development team as overpaid and underperforming, and suggested that Lyra could easily replace them with contractors at half the cost. He called our sales team relationship-dependent rather than results-driven. Most personally painful, he described me as technically competent but lacking the leadership vision needed for enterprise-scale operations. Marcus had spent 3 years telling us we were family while secretly planning to throw us away like garbage. Head looked me in the eye, shaken my hand, and promised me a future while signing documents that would destroy my career and financial security. The man I'd trusted completely had been lying to my face for months. The quarterly review meeting was scheduled for Thursday morning at 10 a.m. sharp. Marcus sent the invitation with his typical corporate enthusiasm. Exciting updates to share about Cloud Tech's future. Mandatory attendance for all staff. Head reserved the main conference room and ordered catered breakfast, which was unusual enough to get people talking. I watched my colleagues prepare for the meeting with an innocence that broke my heart. Sarah, from accounting, spent Tuesday afternoon updating her budget projections for her daughter's college tuition. She'd been counting on the yearly bonus Marcus had promised during her last performance review. Emma's been accepted to Northwestern. Sarah told me excitedly. The tuition is steep, but Marcus said we're looking at a record year for bonuses. Tom from sales had just bought his first house, a modest 3-bedroom ranch in the suburbs that had been saving for since he started at Cloud Tech 2 years ago. His mortgage payment was manageable on his current salary, but only because Head factored in the job security and growth potential Marcus had emphasized during his hiring process. Lola, can you believe I'm actually a homeowner? Tom had grinned last Friday, showing me photos of his new backyard. Marcus was right about building something stable here. Janet from marketing was supporting her 78-year-old mother, whose medical bills had been mounting since her diabetes diagnosis. Janet had turned down higher-paying jobs at larger companies because Marcus had convinced her that Cloud Tech's family atmosphere and flexible work arrangements were worth more than a bigger paycheck. Mom's doctor says the new treatment is expensive, but my job here gives me the flexibility to take care of her. Janet had confided in me just last week. Watching these good people trust Marcus completely while knowing what was coming made me physically ill. They'd built their lives around the stability and promises Head given them. They'd made major financial decisions based on his assurances about Cloud Tech's bright future. In 2 hours, all of their careful planning would collapse. The irony was that some employees were actually excited about the meeting. Marcus had been dropping hints about big changes and new opportunities for weeks. People interpreted his mysterious behavior as preparation for good news. Maybe we were landing a major client. Maybe we were expanding into new markets. Maybe we were finally going public and everyone would get equity shares. Nobody suspected that Marcus was preparing to betray every single person who'd helped build his company. During this emotional turmoil, I kept thinking about the tech conference in Seattle 6 months ago. It was where I'd first met David Chen, the chief technology officer of Lyra Systems. I'd been presenting a paper on distributed computing architectures when David approached me afterward. That was brilliant work, Head said, handing me his business card. Your approach to load balancing is exactly what we've been trying to perfect at Lyra. Have you considered what you could accomplish with unlimited resources and a team of 50 engineers? David's offer had been tempting but felt premature. I was loyal to Cloud Tech and believed in what we were building, but David was persistent in a respectful way. He'd send me technical articles, he thought. I'd find interesting. Invite me to industry events where we could discuss advanced computing theories and occasionally check in about my career satisfaction. When you're ready to take your innovations to the next level, Lola would love to have you at Lyra, David had said during our last conversation 3 months ago. We're not just looking for talented engineers, we're looking for visionaries who can lead transformation in this industry. I'd politely declined again, but kept his contact information. Now, with Marcus' betrayal exposed, David's offer seemed like more than just a career opportunity. It was potentially the key to protecting my colleagues and exposing Marcus' fraud. Using my system administrator access, I'd spent the last 2 weeks gathering evidence of Marcus' deception. I carefully documented every email thread about the sale, every instance where Head lied to employees about company direction, and every violation of his fiduciary duty as CEO. The most damaging evidence was a recorded phone conversation between Marcus and someone at Pembroke Consulting. Our office phone system automatically recorded all calls for quality assurance purposes, and I'd discovered a particularly revealing exchange from last Tuesday. I don't care what the employees think they deserve, Marcus had said. They're overpaid for what they deliver. Lyra's getting the platform and the client relationships, which are the only things that matter. These people were never anything more than temporary expenses anyway. When the consultant asked about potential severance packages or retention bonuses, Marcus laughed. Why would I pay them to leave? They should be grateful they got 3 years of steady employment. Most of them are easily replaceable. The callousness in his voice was shocking. This was the same man who'd given heartfelt speeches about our company family during every holiday party. My investigation revealed that Marcus had been planning this betrayal for over a year. Head started liquidating his personal Cloud Tech stock 18 months ago, disguising the transactions as portfolio diversification to avoid raising suspicions. Had also been using company funds for personal expenses, like his new Tesla and his wife's European vacation, which qualified as embezzlement under federal law. Most importantly, I'd discovered that Lyra Systems had specifically requested to hire Cloud Tech's entire development team as part of any acquisition. Marcus had deliberately hidden this from the sale negotiations to maximize his personal payout at our expense. Lyra thought they were getting a talented team along with the platform. Marcus was selling them assets while abandoning the people who created those assets. The scope of his deception was staggering. Head violated employment law, securities regulations, and basic ethical business practices. Head committed fraud against both his employees and the buyer. But Marcus thought he was too clever to get caught. Head hidden behind legal technicalities and NDAs, assuming that no one would have the access or knowledge needed to expose him. He was wrong. 2 weeks ago, after discovering the full extent of Marcus' betrayal, I made a decision that would change everything. I called David Chen at Lyra Systems, but not to accept his job offer. I had something much bigger in mind. David, it's Lola from Cloud Tech, I said during our Tuesday evening phone conversation. I need to tell you something important about your acquisition plans. The conversation that followed was explosive. David had no idea that Marcus was planning to abandon the development team. In fact, Lyra's acquisition strategy was built entirely around hiring Cloud Tech's talented staff to expand their engineering capabilities. This makes no sense, David said after I explained Marcus' deception. We specifically told their CEO that we wanted to retain all technical personnel. The platform is impressive, but what we really need is the team that built it. Why would he hide that from his own employees? When I described Marcus' personal compensation package and his dismissive comments about our team, David's response was immediate anger. That's fraud, Lola. Hess misrepresenting the deal to both sides. We're paying $55 million under the assumption that we're getting a turnkey operation with trained staff, not an abandoned platform that we'd have to rebuild from scratch. David's next words changed my life. What if we could fix this situation and expose his fraud at the same time? Are you interested in joining Lyra directly and helping us handle this ethically? That conversation led to the most intense 2 weeks of my professional life. Working with David and Lyra's legal team, we developed a strategy that would protect my colleagues, expose Marcus' crimes, and ensure that justice was served. The plan required me to make myself absolutely indispensable to CloudTech's platform operations. This wasn't sabotage in any malicious sense. Instead, I used my legitimate administrator access to create elegant dependencies that showcased my unique knowledge while ensuring system stability. Over the course of 10 days, I implemented several technical measures that highlighted my value. I created custom API protocols that required advanced knowledge of our architecture to modify or troubleshoot. I developed database optimization scripts that improved performance by 30% but used sophisticated algorithms that only I fully understood. I built new security features that were incredibly effective but relied on encryption methods I personally designed. These weren't backdoors or time bombs. Everything I implemented made the platform better and more secure. But they also demonstrated that any company acquiring CloudTech would need my specific expertise to maintain and expand the system. Most importantly, I documented every enhancement with detailed technical specifications. This wasn't about creating dependencies that would harm Lyra systems. It was about proving my value and ensuring that any transition would require my direct involvement. Simultaneously, I worked with Lyra's legal team to gather evidence of Marcus fraud. They helped me understand which documents would be most valuable for potential criminal and civil proceedings. We carefully cataloged every instance where Marcus had misrepresented the acquisition terms, violated his fiduciary duty, or committed potential embezzlement. The evidence was overwhelming. Marcus had systematically lied to employees about job security while negotiating their termination. Had hidden material facts from Lyra about the team's retention expectations. Had used company resources for personal benefit without board approval or proper documentation. But the most damaging evidence was Marcus' own words. The recorded phone conversations where he described employees as temporary expenses and easily replaceable would devastate him in any legal proceeding. His dismissive attitude toward people who'd made his success possible showed a pattern of bad faith dealing that violated multiple employment and securities laws. During this preparation phase, David and I negotiated my employment terms with Lyra. The offer was better than anything it imagined. A 20% salary increase, full relocation assistance, comprehensive health benefits, equity options that could be worth millions if Lyra went public, and a signing bonus equal to 2 years of my current salary. But more than the financial package, Lyra offered something Marcus never had: respect. David introduced me to their senior leadership team during a video conference, and they treated me as an equal partner in technical discussions. They asked detailed questions about my architecture decisions, praised my innovative solutions, and solicited my opinions about industry trends. "We've been watching your work for years, Lola," said Patricia Williams, Lyra's CEO. "Your distributed computing approach is exactly the foundation we need for our next-generation platform. We're not just hiring you to maintain existing systems, we want you to lead our technical evolution." The contrast with Marcus' leadership style was stark. Where Marcus took credit for innovations he didn't understand, Lyra's team gave me full recognition for my contributions. Where Marcus made promises he had no intention of keeping, Lyra put their commitments in writing with legal guarantees. The final piece of our plan required perfect timing. I signed my employment contract with Lyra at 11:30 p.m. on Wednesday night, exactly 12 hours before Marcus' quarterly review meeting. This gave me legal protection and ensured that any attempt Marcus made to retaliate would be futile. David's final words before the meeting were both reassuring and empowering. "Remember, Lola, you're not just protecting yourself tomorrow, you're protecting 41 other people who deserve better than what Marcus is planning to give them. We'll handle everything legally and ethically, but you need to be the catalyst that exposes his fraud." As I sat in my apartment Wednesday night, reviewing my notes for the next day's confrontation, I felt a strange mixture of anxiety and excitement. For 3 years, Marcus had held all the power in our relationship. Had made decisions about my career, my compensation, and my future without any input from me. Had treated me as a valuable asset to be managed rather than a professional to be respected. Tomorrow, that dynamic would change forever. Id documented his crimes, secured my own future, and prepared to protect my colleagues from his betrayal. Marcus thought he was walking into a routine meeting where he'd announce his windfall while dismissing everyone who'd made it possible. Instead, he was walking into the most devastating professional confrontation of his life. Thursday morning arrived with deceptive normalcy. I drove to CloudTech's office building through the same suburban traffic I'd navigated for 3 years, passing the same strip malls and office parks that had become routine landmarks, but everything felt different knowing what was about to unfold. The main conference room buzzed with nervous energy as all 42 employees gathered around the long oval table. Marcus had outdone himself with the catered breakfast spread: fresh bagels, premium coffee, fruit platters, and pastries from the expensive bakery downtown. The gesture felt obscene, knowing he was about to destroy everyone's livelihood. Sarah sat near the front, clutching a folder of her daughter's college acceptance letters and financial aid documents. Shed brought them to share her excitement about Emma's upcoming freshman year at Northwestern. Tom was practically glowing with pride, having received the keys to his new house just 3 days ago. Janet looked tired but hopeful, having spent the morning arranging her mother's afternoon medical appointment around this important company meeting. Marcus entered the room at exactly 10 a.m., wearing his most expensive suit and a smile that made my skin crawl. He carried a leather portfolio and moved with the confidence of someone who believed he held all the cards. "Good morning, CloudTech family," he began, and I nearly vomited hearing him use that word. "Thank you all for being here today. What I'm about to share with you represents the culmination of everything we've built together over the past 3 years. He clicked open his laptop and projected a PowerPoint presentation onto the wall screen. The first slide read, "CloudTech Solutions. A new chapter begins." The corporate rhetoric was sickening considering what was coming. "I'm thrilled to announce that CloudTech Solutions has been acquired by Lyra Systems for $55 million, Marcus said, his voice filled with fake excitement. "This represents an incredible validation of the platform we've developed and the market position we've achieved." The room erupted in confused murmurs. Acquisition could be good news if handled properly, but Marcus' tone suggested something else was coming. "Now, I know you're wondering what this means for each of you," Marcus continued, and I watched faces around the table lean forward with anticipation. "The reality is that Lyra Systems is primarily interested in our technology assets and client relationships. They have their own development team and operational structure in place." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees as people began to understand what he was really saying. "Effective immediately following the sale closing, all current CloudTech employment contracts will be terminated," Marcus announced with shocking casualness. "There are no retention packages or severance benefits included in this transaction." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched Sarah's face turn white as she processed that her daughter's college fund had just evaporated. Tom's hand unconsciously moved to his jacket pocket where he kept his new house keys, as if touching them could somehow protect his mortgage payments. Janet closed her eyes and took a shaky breath, probably calculating how many months of her mother's medical bills she could cover with her savings. Then, incredibly, someone started clapping. It was Brad from customer service, a 23-year-old who still lived with his parents and apparently didn't understand the implications of what Marcus had just said. $55 million. "That's amazing, Marcus." A few other younger employees joined in, thinking this was good news for the company. Their applause felt like a slap in the face to everyone who understood what was really happening. Marcus basked in the confused celebration, raising his hand for attention. "I want to thank each of you for your contributions to making this success possible," he said with nauseating false sincerity. "This acquisition validates everything we've worked toward." That was my cue. I stood up slowly, and the room gradually quieted as people noticed my movement. Every eye turned toward me, including Marcus. His expression shifted from confident satisfaction to mild confusion when he saw my calm demeanor. "Marcus," I said clearly, my voice carrying across the silent room. "Who exactly is the buyer?" It was a simple question, but I could see him wondering why I was asking. He probably assumed I wanted details about potential job opportunities or transition planning. "Lyra Systems," he replied with a self-satisfied smirk. They're paying $55 million for everything we've built here. It's the culmination of my 3-year vision for this company. I nodded thoughtfully, as if processing this information for the first time. Around the table, people were watching our exchange with growing tension. Something about the dynamic felt different from a typical company meeting. That's interesting, I said, maintaining my calm tone. Lyra Systems is a good company. Professional leadership, excellent technical reputation, strong growth trajectory. Marcus' smirk widened. He thought I was complimenting his deal-making abilities. Yes, well, I've been in negotiations with them for several months, he said proudly. They recognize the value of what we've created here, particularly the platform architecture and client base. I paused for a moment, letting the tension build naturally. Then I delivered the words I'd been rehearsing for 2 weeks. That's good news, Marcus. They hired me last night. And without me, the platform doesn't run. The reaction was immediate and devastating. Marcus' face went through several distinct phases: confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally rage. The room fell into absolute silence as people tried to process what I'd just said. What did you just say? Marcus asked, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. I signed an employment contract with Lyra Systems at 11:30 last night. I replied calmly. David Chen, their CTO, has been recruiting me for months. They specifically want Cloud Tech's development team, not just the platform assets. Marcus' professional composure cracked completely. You're fired, he snapped. Security will escort you out immediately. Sarah, call building security right now. But Sarah wasn't moving. She was staring at me with growing hope, beginning to understand that maybe this betrayal had a different ending than she'd feared. You can't fire me, Marcus, I said, still maintaining my calm tone. I don't work for you anymore. As of midnight last night, I'm a Lyra Systems employee, and they're very interested in learning why their $55 million acquisition doesn't include the technical team they specifically requested to hire. The color drained from Marcus' face as the implications of my words sank in. He reached for his phone, probably to call his lawyer or someone at Lyra, but his hands were shaking with rage. This is industrial espionage, he threatened. I'll sue you for breach of contract, theft of trade secrets, and corporate sabotage. I smiled for the first time that morning. Actually, Marcus, you should probably be more worried about your own legal problems, like the fact that you've been lying to Lyra about your intentions to abandon the development team, or the way you've been embezzling company funds for personal use, or how you violated your fiduciary duty to maximize employee benefits during this sale. The room was completely silent now, with 41 people hanging on every word of our exchange. Marcus tried one last desperate power play. I'm calling IT to lock down your system access immediately, he said, frantically dialing an extension. Go ahead, I replied, but you might want to know that I've already transferred all my access credentials and work product to Lyra's servers. Everything I've built here now belongs to my new employer, who has legitimate legal claim to it as part of your sale agreement. Marcus' call to IT was brief and devastating. I could hear him barking instructions about locking down my accounts, then listening to a response that made his face turn an alarming shade of red. What do you mean the system shows she's no longer employed here? He asked the IT department. Change it back immediately. Another pause, another response that clearly wasn't what Marcus wanted to hear. What do you mean there's a legal notice from Lyra Systems claiming ownership of her work product? The room watched Marcus growing panic with fascination. This wasn't the confident leader who'd walked in 10 minutes ago to announce his personal windfall. This was a man realizing that his carefully planned betrayal was falling apart in real time. I let him struggle with IT for another minute before delivering the final blow that would change everything. Marcus, I said, my voice cutting through his increasingly frantic phone conversation with IT support. You should probably hang up and listen to what I have to say. Your employees deserve to know the truth about what you've been planning. He ended his call and glared at me with pure hatred. Around the table, 41 people were watching this confrontation with growing fascination. They sensed that something bigger was happening than just my job announcement. For the past 3 months, I began, addressing my colleagues rather than Marcus. Our CEO has been secretly negotiating to sell this company while lying to all of us about his intentions. I reached into my folder and pulled out printed copies of the most damaging emails I'd discovered. Marcus has been telling Lyra Systems that we're overpaid and underperforming, has been actively sabotaging our reputations to justify abandoning us after the sale. Sarah leaned forward in her chair. What do you mean, abandoning us? I mean that Marcus structured this deal specifically to maximize his personal profit while ensuring that none of us would be offered positions with Lyra. I explained. Hess getting $12 million as a founder's bonus while you get nothing. The number 12 million hit the room like a physical blow. People started doing quick mental math, realizing that Marcus' personal payout was more than all their combined salaries for the next 3 years. Tom spoke up, his voice tight with emotion. But you just said Lyra wanted to hire us. How is that possible if Marcus negotiated our termination? Because Marcus lied to both sides, I replied. Lyra Systems specifically requested to retain CloudTech's entire development team as part of any acquisition. They told Marcus they were interested in our talent, not just our technology. But Marcus hid that from you and from me because keeping us employed would have reduced his personal compensation package. I pulled out another document. The recorded transcript of Marcus' phone conversation with Pembroke Consulting. Here's what Marcus really thinks about the people who built his company. Reading from the transcript, I quoted his exact words. I don't care what the employees think they deserve. They're overpaid for what they deliver. These people were never anything more than temporary expenses anyway. The reaction was immediate and visceral. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. Janet's eyes filled with tears of rage. Tom stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Marcus, Tom said, his voice shaking with anger. I bought a house 3 days ago based on your assurances about job security. Are you telling me you knew I was going to be unemployed when you congratulated me on my mortgage approval? Marcus tried to regain control of the situation. These are private business communications taken out of context. Lola is manipulating you with selective information. Then let's get more context, I said, pulling out the complete sale agreement. This document shows that you've been planning this betrayal for over a year. You've been liquidating your personal stock while telling us to invest in company retirement plans. You've been using company funds for personal expenses while denying our requests for equipment upgrades. I turned to specific pages I'd marked with yellow sticky notes. Harry's, where you described our sales team as relationship dependent rather than results driven. Harry's, where you called our customer service department adequate but not exceptional. And here's my personal favorite, where you described me as technically competent but lacking the leadership vision needed for enterprise-scale operations. That last quote stung more than I'd expected, even though I'd read it dozens of times while preparing for this confrontation. But saying it out loud in front of everyone somehow made Marcus' betrayal feel even more personal. The truth is that Marcus has been systematically destroying our professional reputations to justify his decision to abandon us, I continued. But here's what he didn't count on. Lyra Systems never wanted to abandon us. They specifically wanted to hire all of us. I pulled out my signed employment contract and held it up for everyone to see. David Chen, Lyra's CTO, has been trying to recruit me for months. When I told him about Marcus' deception, he was shocked. Lyra's acquisition strategy was built around hiring CloudTech's team to expand their engineering capabilities. Sarah raised her hand tentatively. Does that mean there might be jobs for us with Lyra? More than jobs, I replied. Opportunities, better salaries, comprehensive benefits, equity options, and leadership that actually values your contributions. David is planning to interview everyone who's interested in joining their team. The mood in the room shifted dramatically. What had started as devastating news about unemployment was transforming into hope for something better than what Wed had at CloudTech. But I wasn't finished exposing Marcus' crimes. There's more you need to know, I said, pulling out the final set of documents. Marcus hasn't just betrayed us as employees. Has committed multiple felonies in the process. I detailed the evidence of embezzlement, company funds used for personal vacations, unauthorized stock sales, and fraudulent expense reports. I explained how Head violated securities laws by misrepresenting material facts to both employees and the buyer. Most seriously, I revealed that I'd already filed complaints with the Department of Labor, the State Attorney General, and the IRS about his fraudulent business practices. I've also been in contact with the FBI's white-collar crime division. I added, watching Marcus' face turn gray. They're very interested in investigating cases of corporate fraud and embezzlement, especially when the amounts involved exceed federal thresholds. Marcus finally found his voice again. You have no right to make these accusations. I've done nothing illegal. This is a legitimate business transaction. Then you won't mind explaining to federal investigators why you used $63,000 in company funds to pay for your wife's European vacation, I replied, or why you backdated stock option agreements to avoid paying proper taxes on your compensation, or why you lied to Lyra about the team retention requirements while lying to us about job security. The room watched Marcus struggle to find a response that didn't incriminate him further. His confident demeanor had completely evaporated, replaced by the panicked expression of someone realizing their crimes were about to be exposed. Janet spoke up from the back of the room. Lola, what happens to us now? Do we just wait to see if Lyra wants to hire us? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text message from David Chen. Perfect timing. Actually, I said, smiling for the first time that morning, David is already here. Hez in the lobby with Lyra's HR team, ready to begin transition planning immediately. The transformation in the room was remarkable. Fear and despair gave way to excitement and hope as people realized this story might have a happy ending after all. Marcus made one last desperate attempt to maintain control. Nobody leaves this room until I say so. We need to discuss transition procedures and non-compete agreements. Actually, Marcus, I said, checking my watch, I think you're about to have more pressing concerns than our employment status. As if on cue, there was a knock on the conference room door. The conference room door opened to reveal two people in dark suits who definitely weren't from Lyra Systems. They had the unmistakable bearing of law enforcement officers, and the badges they displayed confirmed my suspicion. Marcus Henderson, the lead agent asked, stepping into the room with practiced authority. Yes, Marcus replied weakly, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm Agent Patricia Rodriguez with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. This is Agent Michael Thompson. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of wire fraud, embezzlement, and securities fraud. The room fell into stunned silence as Agent Rodriguez began reading Marcus his Miranda rights. The man who had walked into this meeting confident about his $12 million payday was now being handcuffed in front of 42 witnesses. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. I watched Marcus' face cycle through disbelief, rage, and finally terror as the reality of his situation sank in. His carefully planned betrayal had become a catastrophic legal nightmare in the span of 30 minutes. This is ridiculous, Marcus protested as the handcuffs clicked into place. I want my lawyer. These charges are completely fabricated. Agent Thompson consulted a thick folder of documents. Mr. Henderson, we have extensive evidence of your fraudulent activities spanning the past 18 months. Bank records showing unauthorized use of corporate funds, email communications documenting securities violations, and recorded phone conversations where you admit to breach of fiduciary duty. As they prepared to escort Marcus from the building, his phone started ringing. Agent Rodriguez checked the caller ID and showed it to her partner with a slight smile. That would be your wife, she said. She's probably calling about the asset forfeiture notices we served this morning. Your house, cars, and bank accounts have been frozen pending investigation. The color completely drained from Marcus' face. You can't do that. My wife isn't involved in any of this. Any assets purchased with proceeds from criminal activity are subject to seizure. Agent Thompson explained matter-of-factly. Your Tesla, your wife's jewelry, your vacation home in Aspen, even your country club membership were all purchased using funds you embezzled from this company. As federal agents led Marcus through the office in handcuffs, 41 employees watched in stunned amazement. The man who had betrayed their trust was getting exactly the justice he deserved, but our story was far from over. As Marcus' perp walk concluded, David Chen appeared in the doorway with 3 other Lyra Systems executives. His timing was perfect. offering hope and opportunity exactly when we needed it most. "Good morning, everyone," David said with a warm smile that was the opposite of Marcus' fake corporate charm. "I'm David Chen from Lyra Systems, and I believe Lola has already mentioned why we're here." Patricia Williams, Lyra's CEO, stepped forward to address the group. She was a woman in her early 50s with genuine warmth and professional confidence that felt completely different from Marcus' narcissistic leadership style. "First, I want to apologize for the deception you've experienced," Patricia began. "When we negotiated to acquire Cloud Tech, we specifically requested to retain all technical personnel. We had no idea that your CEO was planning to terminate your employment." She paused to let that information sink in before continuing. "Lyra Systems values the talent and dedication that built this platform. We're not interested in acquiring technology without the people who created it." Sarah raised her hand tentatively. "What exactly does that mean for us?" "It means we'd like to interview every one of you for equivalent or better positions with Lyra," Patricia replied. "We're prepared to offer competitive salaries, comprehensive benefits, equity participation, and most importantly, leadership that respects your contributions." David stepped forward with a stack of folders. "We've prepared individual information packets for each of you. These include job descriptions, salary ranges, and benefit summaries for positions that match your current roles and experience levels." The excitement in the room was palpable as people realized this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about advancement and opportunity. Tom spoke up. "What about relocation? Some of us have just made major commitments here." "Lyra has a generous relocation assistance program," Patricia answered. "But we're also planning to maintain a significant presence in this area. Many of you could continue working from this location if you prefer." Janet asked the question that was probably on everyone's mind. "Why would you do this for us? You could just hire the platform and rebuild the team cheaper somewhere else." Patricia's response was immediate and sincere. "Because talent like yours isn't easily replaced. Lola's platform architecture is brilliant, but what impressed us most was learning about the collaborative culture you've built here. We want that culture at Lyra, not just the technology." Over the next 2 hours, David and his team conducted brief individual meetings with every Cloud Tech employee. The results were remarkable. 39 of 41 people received job offers that exceeded their current compensation and benefits. The 2 who weren't offered positions actually requested them because they wanted to pursue different career paths. Sarah learned that her new salary would include tuition assistance for her daughter's education, completely eliminating her college funding worries. Tom discovered that Lyra's mortgage assistance program would actually reduce his housing costs while improving his benefits package. Janet found out about Lyra's family care support system, which would provide resources for her mother's medical needs. But perhaps most importantly, everyone was treated with respect and dignity throughout the process. David and Patricia asked thoughtful questions about career goals, listened carefully to concerns, and provided honest answers about expectations and opportunities. The contrast with Marcus' leadership couldn't have been more stark. Where Marcus had demanded loyalty while planning betrayal, Lyra offered partnership and transparency. Where Marcus had taken credit for innovations he didn't understand, Lyra's leaders gave proper recognition to the people who actually did the work. As the day progressed, we learned more about Marcus' downfall. Agent Rodriguez returned to explain that their investigation had uncovered evidence of fraud spanning back 2 years. Marcus faced potential federal prison time of 15 to 20 years, along with complete asset forfeiture and professional disgrace. His wife filed for divorce this afternoon, Agent Rodriguez told me confidentially. Apparently, she had no idea about the embezzlement or the employee betrayal. She's cooperating fully with our investigation. Justice was being served not just through criminal prosecution, but through the complete collapse of the life Marcus had built using stolen money and broken promises. But the most satisfying aspect of the entire day was watching my colleagues transition from despair to hope to genuine excitement about their futures. People who had walked into that conference room fearing unemployment were leaving with opportunities they'd never imagined possible. 6 months later, I stood in Lyra Systems' state-of-the-art development center, watching my team of 12 engineers collaborate on our most ambitious project yet. The open concept workspace buzzed with the kind of creative energy that had always been missing at CloudTech, and I finally understood what it felt like to work for leaders who valued innovation over ego. My promotion to senior technical architect had come with responsibilities it only dreamed about under Marcus' leadership. Instead of just maintaining existing systems, I was designing the next generation of distributed computing platforms that would serve millions of users worldwide. David Chen had become not just a boss, but a genuine mentor, challenging me to think bigger while providing the resources and support to make ambitious visions reality. The difference in work culture was transformative. At CloudTech, Eid worked 60-hour weeks because Marcus demanded constant availability without regard for personal well-being. At Lyra, I worked intensely during business hours but went home at reasonable times to actually have a life. The company's emphasis on work-life balance wasn't just corporate rhetoric. It was a fundamental philosophy that produced better results through sustainable practices. My colleagues from CloudTech had thrived in their new environment as well. Sarah had been promoted twice in 6 months, her analytical skills finally receiving proper recognition and compensation. Her daughter Emma was thriving at Northwestern, fully funded through Lyra's Education Assistance Program, and Sarah had started dating again for the first time in years now that her financial stress was eliminated. Tom had become one of Lyra's most successful account managers, his natural relationship-building abilities finally supported by adequate resources and realistic targets. His mortgage concerns were a distant memory, replaced by equity options that could potentially make him wealthy if Lyra went public as planned. More importantly, Head started coaching youth baseball on weekends, something Head never had time for during his CloudTech days. Janet had discovered her true calling in Lyra's customer success division, where her empathy and communication skills made her invaluable for client retention and satisfaction. Her mother's medical care was fully covered through Lyra's family support benefits, and Janet had finally been able to pursue the MBA shed delayed for years due to financial constraints. The transformation wasn't just individual, it was collective. Our former CloudTech team had become the nucleus of Lyra's most innovative division, our collaborative culture spreading throughout the organization and inspiring other teams to adopt our approaches to problem-solving and project management. But success at Lyra was only part of our story's resolution. Marcus' legal consequences had been swift and comprehensive. Head ultimately pleaded guilty to 12 federal charges, including wire fraud, embezzlement, and securities violations. His sentencing hearing last month had resulted in 18 months in federal prison, 5 years of supervised probation, and complete asset forfeiture, totaling nearly $8 million. More significantly, Marcus had been required to write personal apology letters to every former CloudTech employee as part of his plea agreement. His letter to me was particularly revealing. Lola, I know this apology comes too late to undo the harm I caused, but I need you to understand that my actions weren't personal attacks against you or our team. I was so focused on my own financial success that I lost sight of my responsibilities as a leader and as a human being. Your technical innovations made CloudTech successful, and I should have protected and promoted you instead of trying to minimize your contributions. I hope you can eventually forgive me, not for my sake but for your own peace of mind. Reading that letter had been strangely cathartic, not because it justified his actions or earned my forgiveness, but because it represented genuine acknowledgement of the harm Head caused. Marcus had finally taken responsibility for his choices and their consequences. His community service requirement had led to an unexpected development. Marcus was now teaching business ethics courses to MBA students at the local university, sharing his story as a cautionary tale about the dangers of prioritizing personal profit over professional integrity. According to his probation officer, Head become an effective advocate for ethical leadership precisely because his fall from grace was so complete and public. During the winter holidays, several of my former CloudTech colleagues and I had attended one of Marcus' ethics presentations. Watching him honestly discuss his crimes and their impact was surreal but somehow healing. He wasn't asking for sympathy or minimizing his responsibility. He was simply trying to prevent other business leaders from making the same destructive choices Head made. The most powerful moment came during the question and answer session, when a student asked Marcus what Head learned from his experience. I learned that loyalty has to be mutual to mean anything, Marcus had replied. I demanded loyalty from people while planning to betray them, which isn't leadership at all. Real leadership means protecting the people who depend on you, even when that protection costs you personally. It was the kind of insight that Marcus should have had years earlier, but hearing him express it publicly felt like a form of justice for everyone he'd harmed. The broader impact of our story had extended beyond personal resolution to professional industry change. David Chen had presented our experience at several technology conferences, highlighting how employee retention and ethical leadership directly correlate with innovation and business success. Our Cloud Tech to Lyra transition had become a case study in business schools about the importance of transparent communication and mutual respect in corporate acquisitions. Most personally meaningful to me was the recognition I'd received from industry organizations for exposing corporate fraud and protecting vulnerable employees. The Technology Leadership Foundation had presented me with their Ethics in Innovation Award, acknowledging that technical expertise comes with responsibility to use that knowledge for positive social impact. But the real measure of our story's success wasn't awards or recognition. It was the knowledge that 41 people had been protected from financial devastation and professional betrayal through collective action and mutual support. We'd proven that ethical behavior and business success weren't mutually exclusive, and that standing up to injustice could create opportunities that wouldn't have existed otherwise. As I finished reviewing the quarterly reports showing our division's record-breaking performance, I realized that Marcus had inadvertently given all of us the greatest gift possible, the chance to discover our true potential under ethical leadership that valued our contributions. Sometimes betrayal forces you to find strength you didn't know you possessed. Sometimes the worst professional experience of your life becomes the catalyst for the best opportunities you'll ever have. And sometimes, standing up to powerful people who abuse their authority creates positive change that extends far beyond your own situation. The most important lesson from our experience wasn't about technical skills or business strategy. It was about the fundamental truth that how you treat people ultimately determines not just their success, but your own. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where someone in authority was betraying your trust? How did you handle it? And what would you do differently if faced with that choice again? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help others find it who might be facing similar workplace challenges. Subscribe to our channel for more stories about finding strength in difficult situations and turning betrayal into opportunity. And share this video with anyone who might benefit from knowing that standing up to injustice is possible, even when it feels impossible. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you have more power than you realize to protect yourself and others from those who would exploit your loyalty and hard work. Remember that your skills, your integrity, and your courage are assets that no one can take away from you, no matter how much authority they think they have. Stay strong, stay ethical, and never let anyone convince you that you deserve less respect than you give.